Zechariah was one of the minor prophets of the Old Testament, and his story is recorded in the book that bears his name. He lived during the post-exilic period when the Jews returned from Babylonian captivity to Jerusalem around the 6th century BC. Zechariah was a contemporary of the prophet Haggai, and like him, he played a crucial role in the rebuilding of the Jerusalem temple and the spiritual renewal of the people. He was the son of Berechiah and the grandson of Iddo, belonging to a priestly lineage. His prophetic mission began in the second year of the reign of Darius, the Persian king. The context of his calling was marked by discouragement and difficulties. After returning from exile, the Jews faced opposition from neighboring peoples, a lack of resources, and spiritual disillusionment. This led to the temple's reconstruction being halted for about 16 years. Zechariah received a series of visions aimed at encouraging the people and conveying the message that God was present and actively working on their behalf. In one of his early visions, he saw horses patrolling the earth, symbolizing God's vigilance over the world and especially over Israel's condition. In another vision, he observed 4 horns and 4 craftsmen, representing the powers that oppressed Israel and God's instruments to overcome them. One of Zechariah's central messages was the promise that God would restore the city of Jerusalem and that the temple would be rebuilt as a sign of the renewal of the covenant between God and his people. He also prophesied about the key roles of Governor Zerubbabel and High Priest Joshua in this restoration, both seen as chosen figures to lead God's work. Beyond the visions of physical and spiritual reconstruction in Jerusalem, Zechariah spoke of the messianic future. He foretold the coming of a righteous and humble king who would bring salvation and ride on a donkey, a prophecy later fulfilled in Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem. He also prophesied about God's ultimate triumph over all nations and the establishment of a kingdom of peace and justice. Zechariah's work was not limited to promises of restoration. He also called the people to repentance. He reminded them of the mistakes of their ancestors, who had been disobedient and suffered divine judgment. Zechariah emphasized the need for justice, mercy, and faithfulness to God as conditions to enjoy the promised blessings. Zechariah concluded his prophetic mission with visions of eschatological hope, describing a time when God would dwell among his people, and Jerusalem would become the center of true worship. He pointed to the day of the Lord when all nations would recognize God's sovereignty and participate in his worship. His message was marked by a balance between warning and promise, encouraging the people to persevere in faith and obedience.